chairs. So we're picking up in Ecclesiastes 6 and 7 tonight. And in chapter 6, it sounds like he's whining again. After you read this for a while, he kind of works himself into a good spot, and then he starts in on something else. And tonight, in chapter 6, he's going to say, and there's another thing that's evil. There is behind this story their understanding of the afterlife. And it helps to have a reference for that. 4,000 years BC, the Egyptians had a fairly advanced theology of the afterlife, especially for the king. And the tombs where they buried all that stuff for the king to eat and travel and in the afterlife. That did not rub off on the Hebrews. The Hebrews did not have, in the Old Testament, did not have much of a story of an afterlife. They saw the world in three parts. The bubble, the firmament was the sky. And the firmament was above the sky. And above the sky was where God lived. And the firmament had poked holes in it. And what were those? What were the holes in the sky?
Stars.
Stars. And when the windows of heaven opened, what happened? It rained. So that's the first story. The middle story is the dry land and the oceans. And that was where we live while we are living. But the bottom level was under the earth, and that went by a couple of different names. Probably the one you're most familiar with is Sheol, Sheol. And Sheol is the place of the dead, and it was a half-life. It was a spirit or a shadow. There wasn't a lot of definition. It wasn't really until Jesus' times that we really have a better understanding of the biblical theology of the afterlife. So the idea of heaven really comes to us in the New Testament. The writings of Paul give us a lot more than we get in the Old Testament. And so that's behind there. There's always this anxiety for Kohelet, the guy who wrote this book, about what's the afterlife going to be. And of course, he's not too anxious to go there. So let's look at chapter 6. I have seen another evil under the sun, and it weighs heavily on men. God gives a man wealth, possessions, and honor, so that he lacks nothing his heart desires. But God does not enable him to enjoy them, and a stranger enjoys them instead. You see the point here. He has everything he desires, but he doesn't enjoy it. It's left to his descendants, maybe even a stranger, his wife's next husband, or his daughter's husband, who has the joy of his stuff. And look what he says. This is meaningless, a grievous evil. So in chapter 5, he said, wealth is a blessing. But now he says, but it's also a curse. This stranger who spends all my money is the master of all for which I toiled. Somebody else inherits my stuff. Now, there's an old joke about a fellow's wife who said, now, honey, when I die, I want you to remarry. And he says, oh, no, I could never do that. And in fact, I want her to have all my jewelry. And the husband says, no, I couldn't do that. And she says, I want her to have my fur coats. And he says, oh no, honey, I just can't see that ever happening. And she says, all right, I want her to have my golf clubs. And he said, oh, well, that's all right. She's left-handed. So
slow burner.
It's a slow burner. It's a very old joke. Or the other line is, I want her to have all my clothes. Oh, no, that's right. She's only an 8. That's the other old line. So, he says wealth is a blessing in chapter 5, and here wealth is a curse. Now, there's another, I want you to think of this also as who else this stranger could be. Someone else comes along and enjoys everything that you toiled for. This book was written during the time that the exiles were returning from Babylon. And there's a possibility that who he's talking about are, here come all of these Jews back from Babylon, and they're walking in here and they're enjoying the fruits of everything that we have labored for while they've been gone. And I can see that, can't you? That would certainly fit the timing of the writing of this book. Then he goes on. A man may have 100 children and live many years, yet no matter how long he lives, if he cannot enjoy his prosperity and does not receive proper burial, I say that a stillborn child is better off than he. So what's important to him is that he has a good funeral. I have a story about that too. A man dies, and the next Sunday his widow comes to church wearing a great big diamond ring. Well, everybody gathers around her to see this diamond ring, and somebody finally says, I'm a little surprised that a week after your husband died, you bought a diamond ring. She says, no, Harry left it in his will that he is to have a nice funeral and a big stone. It's all about interpretation, right? So, he wants to leave a legacy. You can have 100 kids. Will even one of them come back and give him a proper burial? You got this big family, but nobody comes back and fulfills their oath to their parents, respects their parents. And to prearrange to what we would call, John's in the business, people buy their pre-arrangement. So you make sure you get a nice funeral. You get the funeral you want. But that, to this guy, that seems really improper. Because how would I be so vain as to plan my own funeral when my kids should be the ones, my heirs should be the ones to show me the respect? He says, you can live a long time, but if you don't enjoy it, it's better than never having lived at all. So, what's he say? It comes without meaning, verse 4. It departs in darkness, and in darkness its name is shrouded. Though it never, this is the one, the baby who died at birth. Though it never saw the sun or knew anything, it has more rest than does that man. Even if he lives 1,000 years twice over, 2,000 years old, but fails to enjoy his prosperity. All man's efforts are for his mouth, yet his appetite is never satisfied. So here he says, here's the good life. The good life, and we had this a few weeks ago. He comes back to say, the good life is good food and good wine. Something good to drink and something good to eat. That's the good life. You should, if you sit down to a nice meal, you need to be in that moment and enjoy that time. I remember too often wishing my kids' life away. Well, if I wish they were just older, and I wouldn't have to get up in the middle of the night with them if they were older. And well, if they could just tell me what they wanted, oh, my life will be so much better. And after a while, you start wishing your kid's life away. Here's what he says. If you got a good meal and you got your family with you, then sit down and enjoy it. And you can interpret the good wine all you want.
But wasn't wine really about the only thing 100% safe to drink back then?
Yeah, and the wine they had was nothing like our wine.
Well, probably not.
It was watered down with water because it was how you purified the water, and you probably had to get the gravel out of the wine. You know, it was not what we. I mean, it was indeed fermented.
I suppose they did trample it with their bare feet, didn't they? Do you know
Yeah,
that?
yeah, in stone vats. So you know it's.
Got some material in it. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a wine press in Nazareth that we always visit that they found, you know, in their excavations. It's still cut in the stone, in the rock. And you can see it, you know, they trample it, and then you can see there's a little gully. It sloshes over into the next, and then they skim off the better stuff, and it goes down to the next. But wine's purpose was also to purify the water. You're exactly right. He says, but even the simple gifts of food and drink become insatiable. They're just never enough. And he says, well, maybe it's all about fasting. Then look at verse 10, a series of questions. Interesting that in the what's considered the authorized Hebrew version of the Bible, called the Masoretic text, they call this verse 10 through 12 the middle of the book. And that's a way of saying maybe we're getting close to the core of what he's saying. Verse 10. Whatever exists has already been named, and what man is has been known. No man can contend with one who is stronger than he. The more the words, the less the meaning. And how does that profit anyone? A couple of things. The word man is Adam. We say in English Adam. It means from the dirt, from the ground. The word in Hebrew for ground is Adamah. Adam is man or mankind. Adamah is the dirt. So what are we? We're dirt, right? We are ashes to ashes, dust to dust. Our bodies are elements of the earth. He says there's no new insights in life. Everything that's been thought has been thought before. You ever feel like that? You know, there's nothing new under the sun. He said that before. We all really are dust to dust. And he never really gets his questions answered. He never really gets all of the answers. And that's our world, isn't it? We never get all the answers. We have to live with mystery. There's just no way around it. So he says all words lose meaning in the face of someone stronger. How can you wrestle with someone stronger than you? How can you wrestle against God? You can't. How can your words be stronger than God's words? They can't. So what do? Life is a mystery, and it will always be a mystery. And we live in this mystery. Let's keep reading. Who knows what is good for a man? Let's see, the more the words. Who knows what is good for a man in life? During the few and meaningless days he passes through like a shadow. Who can tell him what will happen under the sun after he is gone? Human life is fleeting, and so is human understanding. Any good in life is found in living, not in death. So, and we're going to come back and get into that in a minute in the next chapter, but that, as I said to you last week, death gives meaning to life. That period, that moment of death, knowing that's coming makes life all the more precious. And because life is so valuable, we have to respect it and appreciate it while it lasts. You got any comments about that? I'm just talking. I haven't stopped to let you.
In all things.
Yeah.
Well, he's going to come to that. You're right, Gene. You always are able to, where he's headed. It makes perfect sense.
It does.
So how do you live?
Well, did Shakespeare, in one of his plays, write that when a person dies, the good is often interred with his bones?
You know, that may be. I don't know that quote, but that makes sense.
Well, rewards come later.
And you just hope that maybe something endures, but you don't know. So you can't constantly be worried about what your legacy is going to be. So live in the moment.
I'm
Live.
betting on grace.
Balance.
I think that's a safe bet.
Yeah, exactly.
Anybody else? Any other kick up any dust for you?
Brother Jim, I was sitting here wondering, which can be dangerous at times, but then just about every civilization, or most of them anyhow, have some concept or some idea about an afterlife.
Yes. Yes. It's just the Hebrews were kind of slow to the
Yeah,
game.
that's what
Plato.
yeah.
I read an article today about how much the book of Ecclesiastes was influenced by Greek philosophers. Because, you know, they're about the same time they're coming into being. And the interview I read said probably very little. Now, there are other folks who say, oh, no, we find pieces of this philosopher in Ecclesiastes. Probably just geographically very little crossover, but maybe. Actually, people are making arguments on both sides of that.
Didn't you say that I think it was at least chapters 1 and 2 was it couldn't have been written sooner than 600 years after
Solomon.
had died. What time frame does that put it in?
It puts it about 400
400?
BC. Well, let's see, Alexander the Great conquered the world, what, in 335 BC?
I was going to say, wouldn't that put it before Greek?
A little bit before the Greeks, yeah. At least for the peak of the Greek Empire. So, you know, there's probably not a lot of crossover there. But those ideas are, you know, there's no new ideas under the sun, right? If they're thinking them in Greece, they're thinking them in
Well, the internet was slow back then.
yeah, it was hard to get a tone. It was dial-up. Beep, 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 beep. Remember dial-up, and you'd sit and wait, and you'd send a message, and you'd wait, and you'd wait. And now, if it takes more than 2 seconds to pull up a site, I'm rebooting, I'm doing everything I can figure out.
What amazes me is generations past in BC, some of the structures and things that they left, those people weren't stupid.
Oh my.
Look at Roman engineering and architecture, what they've done. I mean, the aqueducts they built are still standing in some places.
I've seen Roman aqueducts all over Israel. The pyramids and the Sphinx were already ancient when Abraham came through there. I mean, they're ancient. So there's nothing new under the sun. There have been brilliant people and people who've made a lot of money, and a lot of poor people. It's ancient. So this guy, you know, just really struggles with it, and he hasn't come to a lot of conclusions. I think we could probably say it's a mystery.
I think perhaps modern engineers ought to take a look at the Romans. We can't even build an interstate bridge that'll last more than 50 years, and look how long their things have been.
Remarkable.
It's amazing.
But human sacrifice is still going on.
In one form or another.
Yeah.
And slavery.
When you would take your own son and load him up with explosives and send him someplace to blow himself up. I don't comprehend any of that.
I don't know.
So before we leave this chapter, I just want to make a few comments. Death must be accepted in order to enjoy life fully.
Yeah.
If you are constantly freaking out about dying, you're not going to enjoy the days you got. So enjoy the life you have.
But it would be horrible to live forever.
Yeah, I can't think that'd be fun.
I don't think so either.
So by accepting death, it leads to authentic life. You live life more authentically because you know there is an end. Without it, life would be a sham. A state of denial means that you are missing out on life. Because we know death is coming and our days are numbered, we can take pleasure in the days that we have.
I went to a funeral once and the minister said this man that was deceased was authentic. He could say that he was truly I thought that, I can't forget that because I thought that was just about the best thing he could say about him.
He lived an authentic life.
Well, I think it was like what the preacher is saying is how often we compromise ourselves for gain, for when in their understanding, everybody who dies goes to the same place. And so when what you should strive for is authenticity or sincerity, being true to yourself. If you're meant to be a poor person, is like the gain is not worth striving for.
So if you've got something to eat and something to drink, enjoy it.
Something to wear.
Something to
Roof
wear.
over your head. Basic needs.
A Porsche Carrera 911. Oh wait, no, that's not what he says, is it?
It's like in Citizen Kane, he says Rosebud is like his fondest memory was he was the richest man in the world, but his fondest memory was of his childhood.
Not happy.
Never happy in this day. Let's move into chapter 7, and it's a series of proverbs. We kind of we leave this these longer thoughts, and now these are a little shorter thoughts, and we won't hit them all unless you want to, but let's look at them. A good name is better than fine perfume, and the day of death better than the day of birth. I don't know if we all see it that way. It is better.
I don't remember my day of birth.
I think mine was a Tuesday. I wasn't busy.
Today's my wedding anniversary.
Today's your wedding anniversary? How many years would it be, Gene?
Well, now he's been gone 11 years. We live 60.
So you would have married 71 years?
Uh-huh.
71 years ago you got married. Here, wasn't it?
Yeah, this church,
In this sanctuary. Well, I'll tell you what, we'll go look at that wood floor.
Yeah.
And that was the floor that was there when you
Okay,
got married.
It's a center aisle, wasn't it?
Well, this is what no, they didn't have a center aisle, did they?
I went in one and out.
Yeah.
Yeah, they had 2 aisles.
But so
Two doors.
they've exposed part of the wood that you walked on 71 years ago today.
Is it tongue and groove?
Probably is if it's closed.
Probably. I don't know. You have to look at it. We'll go in there when we're done.
I don't know if it's
It is better to go to a house of mourning than to go to a house of feasting. For death is the destiny of every man. The living should take this to heart. So what's he saying? Not that it's good to die, but death is a good reminder of how precious life is.
He also may be saying
But
don't eat too
sometimes
much.
it's good to die.
There are some things worse than living,
Mm-hmm.
worse than dying. Living, oh, I've seen it. The heart, a sorrow is better than laughter because a sad face is good for the heart. Because when you're sadness, just like death reminds you how precious life is, sadness reminds you how precious joy is. Kind of a backward way of thinking, but do you see his point? The heart of the wise is in the house of mourning, but the heart of fools is in the house of pleasure. It is better to heed a wise man's rebuke than to listen to the song of fools. It's better to be fussed at by a good man, by a wise person, than to be encouraged by a bunch of fools.
Brother Jim, when did the word fool become a very, almost a vulgar word? I called a girl a fool in school once and got in serious trouble for it. She was one, but I mean, seriously.
Well, I don't know that I know the answer to that. Do you know the answer?
No, I was rebuked like I said something really foul. I know it's a 4-letter word, it's not bad, some of them, but I mean, I just wondered about that. It just,
So it's better to have somebody tell you the truth who knows what they're talking about than people to encourage you who are idiots. How many times did I say that to my 3 sons? How many times? Jerry had 2 perfect daughters. He didn't have to give them that he didn't have to give them that lecture. And Tim, that's yet in your future, to give your boys that talk, to say, look, don't listen to these idiots. Listen to the one who, even if they rebuke you, they tell you the truth.
sounds like some football coaches we might be able to name.
Well, there it goes. It's like the crackling of thorns under the pot. If you bring in thorn vines to burn as wood under your cooking pot, it makes a lot of noise, but hardly any heat. That's what the laughter of fools is. It makes a lot of noise, but it doesn't give you a lot of life. Pretty good word, huh?
Very good.
That'll preach, Gerald. You got 1 daughter. You probably are not going to have to give her that lecture, but if you get a son, well, you got a son. You need to practice this to your son. Have you said that to Aiden yet? He's a good kid. All right. But be ready. You got a Bible verse right here. Like thorn, the crackling of thorns under the pot is that idiot Billy at school. He's telling you what to do. Extortion turns a wise man into a fool, and a bribe corrupts the heart.
I can believe that, but today we have a lot of people that it doesn't affect.
It doesn't, they're not listening to it.
No, it doesn't bother me at all.
You mean the private part?
The private part doesn't bother me at all.
Doesn't bother them to take right.
No, not at all.
So every fall, Brother Jim here bribes the city of Middletown with pancakes.
Yeah, that's right.
And sometimes it works.
It works, yeah.
This year we're bribing them with donuts. We're not making pancakes. We're not doing pancakes because we don't have access to the kitchen to make the pancakes this year. So we're going to hand out donuts.
Different kinds, I hope.
Well, we're going to get those packaged donuts, like 6 in a package from Sam's. And so I already know what I'm going to order. It's a little early to order them, but I told the staff, I said, I'm going to open those packages and give each of the kids 1 little donut. She said, you'll get toilet papered for sure. Verse 8, the end of a matter is better than its beginning. I think that's true.
Yeah.
When you know how it comes out, it's better than the anxiety of what's going to happen. I always feel like I can deal with most anything if I know what it is. And you know, another example of that is waiting for test results.
Oh,
It's horrible.
Yeah.
It's horrible, but you think, okay, once I know the truth, I can deal with it. But this waiting and waiting and waiting. The end of a matter is better than its beginning, and patience is better than pride. Do not be quickly provoked in your spirit, for anger resides in the lap of fools. What do you think?
that's one of the things
Anything in
about
there about
Practice patience over arrogance. Patience is cultivated by the awareness that one's problems are going to end.
There's nothing that'll enhance that any more than gardening, when you think of that.
Well, that's right. Gardening works. You have a lot of patience. Do not say, why were the old days better than these? You've never done that, have you?
Of course, you never lived in the old days, probably.
For it is not wise to ask such questions. You thought that was a modern thing to say. Now, when I was young, life was a lot better. Here, this is 400 years BC, and they're saying the same thing we say now. I don't think life was better when I was younger.
No.
People across the street from my grandparents still drew water out of the well with one of those long cylinder things, and they had a path out back. That was their that was an outhouse and a path.
What did they have around it, hollyhocks or lilac bushes?
I don't remember. I just remember knowing what it was.
That's what they used to put around the hollyhocks or lilac.
My grandparents had indoor plumbing, and city water.
They were rich.
They were rich in a tiny little town. My-
He's got the
Is this
parts,
preacher-
but you can't get anybody to put the,
Is he like
fix it.
Johnny
He
Carson?
wants to use.
It's kind of like a Johnny Carson, kind of a comedian, isn't he?
You ever
And it's
notice
costing his yard.
how this is terrible? You
And
know,
he wants electric. I
he's
said,
just
"No,
like,
don't
he's on a monologue.
It is. You're right, Tim. It feels like a stand-up comic.
Yeah, stand-up comics.
I'd
It's like,
What is it with about all of these? It sounds like Jerry Seinfeld.
The Amish,
Yeah, what's
and
with
the
Yeah.
Amish
this thing?
got it for him. but
So,
we can't get it
the-
assembled.
Do not say, why were the old days better than these? For it is not wise to ask such questions. Wisdom, like an inheritance, is a good thing. An inheritance is a very good thing. Wisdom, like an inheritance, is a good thing and benefits those who see the sun, those who are alive. You're benefited by an inheritance. Wisdom is a shelter. Think of wisdom as a well of strength, like an inheritance is, that you can draw on to make your life better. Wisdom is a shelter, as money is a shelter. But the advantage of knowledge is this, that wisdom preserves the life of its possessor, and money doesn't always preserve the life of its possessor. We've all known somebody who the money they had made their lives more miserable, either drugs or multiple marriages or whatever.
That's what Herman told me.
Herman
He said-
Potter?
Herman Potter, he said, when Mary got sick, he said, it looks like to me I'm running out of money instead of living.
So maybe wisdom is something to be valued too. Knowing, of course, wisdom, how to spend that inheritance, how to manage it. Wisdom is a shelter, as money is a shelter. Consider what God has done. Now, so look at this. Consider what God has done. Who can straighten what He's made crooked? Can you straighten something out after you've made it crooked? No. You can't unbend a wire. It never looks the same, right? You can never get it to look. It always has a little bit of a crook in it. When times are good, be happy. And when times are bad, consider this. God has made the one as well as the other. Therefore, a man cannot discover anything about his future. Don't be worried all the time about what's going to come. Of course, Jesus had something to say about that, didn't he? Take no thought, don't worry about tomorrow. Who, by worrying, has added a single day to his life? So if you're always worried about what's coming tomorrow, you'll not enjoy the day that you've got. In this meaningless life of mine, I have seen both of these. A righteous man perishing in his righteousness, and a wicked man living long in his wickedness. A good man who died young, doing the right thing, and a terrible man who lived a very long life doing the wrong thing. Haven't you seen that? What's the old saying? Only the good die young? That's pretty much what he's saying. So, and I don't know that I know how to interpret this. So, don't be over righteous. Neither be over wise. Why destroy yourself? I don't know. What's he saying?
You're never wrong when you get to a certain age.
Okay, hang on to that, Jerry, because that's exactly what I was going to say. Do not be over wicked. Don't be too wicked, and don't be a fool. Why die before your time? You've heard the line, what is the last words of the American redneck? Here, hold my beer. You know, right before I do something really stupid. It is good to grasp the one and not let go of the other. The man who fears God will avoid all extremes. Just what you said. Maybe it's good to not just kill yourself trying to just crazy always doing the right thing. Can you see how you can kill yourself like that? You don't get anything done. You just worry. What's the right thing? I'm just going to have to be perfect. At the same time, don't just be a stupid idiot. Just try to do the right thing. Stay in the middle of the road. Because you can't be perfect. You can't be perfect. I have an ongoing debate with a member of this church. She believes things can be perfect. And I say the pursuit of perfection is the root of all evil. I said that was the sin of Adam and Eve. That was the sin in the garden. They wanted to be perfect. Nobody can be perfect. And you'll kill yourself being perfect and making everybody else around you crazy because you have to make them be perfect. There's no such thing.
I bet this person's never been a school teacher.
She has not. It's Vicki Nally. Not that I'm saying names or anything.
Okay.
But she and I have been around about this. Because she says, oh, Brother Jim, you can be perfect. And I said, no, you can't. I said, you can be excellent. I mean, excellent's a good thing. But you can't be perfect.
What you think erasers are on pencils for if you're perfect?
Well, there you go. I'll have to use that line. There is not a righteous man on earth who does what is right and never sins. This guy's pretty current, isn't he?
Yeah, well, you can look at the priest and the pastors that were on television and what's going on in the hierarchies of some religions and that.
Tim and I were talking about that podcast, that very thing. We're listening to a podcast about a preacher that fell. It wasn't sexual sin in his case. It was other stuff. But, don't make yourself crazy trying to be perfect. Maybe every now and then you need to relax. Just relax some. Because you'll kill everybody around you. Do not pay attention to every word people say. Or you may hear your servant cursing you. For you know in your heart how many times you yourself have cursed others. Don't listen to every word of complaint and criticism. If you find out somebody's talking about you, just say, well, at least they're leaving somebody else alone. Okay? Because you're not perfect. Tim?
It was like when we had Emmett and you have to go get your car seat when you go home. You get your car seat. You bring it in, and somebody from the hospital straps the baby. He strapped Emmett into the car seat, and then a hospital employee walks up to your car with you and inspects the car seat you put in there. And it's like, this guy's not a doctor or even a nurse, but he said, he goes, just remember, he's like, the mistakes you make, he's not going to remember.
It's a good thing.
And you'll figure it out.
Yeah. Life is very different. When I took my son home 33 years ago, they just handed us this baby.
Yeah.
It was like, okay, now what do you do? Well, I didn't realize how late the time is.
You didn't get an owner's manual, did you?
I said, there ought to be a printout.
Right.
They should send you home with an instruction. Let's go down to verse 27, and then we got to go. Look, says the teacher, this is what I've discovered. adding one thing to another to discover the scheme of things. While I was still searching but not finding, I found one upright man among 1,000, but not one upright woman among them all.
Oh,
Yeah.
them fighting words, aren't they?
Who wrote that, Paul?
Yeah.
Well, that figures.
Yeah,
I'm not going to defend that at all.
You need to write that one down.
that's right.
This only have I found: God made mankind upright, but men have gone in search of many schemes. God made us to do the right thing, but we sure have messed it up. Fascinating, isn't it?
Good.
So next week we'll try to do chapters 8 and 9, and then we only have one more week after that. I love being with you. It's always enjoyable and this is good stuff. And if you go home and tell your wives what I said, I will deny it. And Daryl's going to remove it from the video so that it's not.
What's so very interesting is that, so many years ago, how wise they were, it applies today.
Well, they would say the exact opposite. Well, let's pray. Lord, I thank you for these ancient words of wisdom that could have been written yesterday. And I thank you for these, your people who take them to heart. Bless this week, we pray in Christ's name. Amen. Sunday worship is over there, and Tim and Gerald, our class is over there. We're in the back classroom. I've got to set that up tomorrow.